Yeah, good afternoon. Welcome to the third live session for this MOOCs course on Ecology and Society. Uh, I welcome you all once again, and you please log in and join. And if there is any query, I'll be more than happy to respond. Uh, so what I do in couple of few 5 or 10 minutes, I'll try to summarize what we have covered in the last uh, few weeks so that you have an idea of what the course content is all about. So I uh, engage in trying to give an elaborate or exhaustive discussions on what social ecology is all about. So social ecology, as we all know, is a term which is being coined by none other than the American anarchist Murray Bookchin, who used this particular concept uh, primarily in his work, that is Ecology and Revolutionary Thought, which was published way back in 1964. So this is social ecology is attempts to provide some kind of an alternative to the environmental crisis confronting us, like we had discussed in the previous weeks on the deep ecology, which is uh, posited by none other than the Norwegian philosopher Arne Nist. So similar to this, social ecology is also an alternative approach and ways of how we should make sense of the uh, ecological crisis. How do we, situate the problems, and then how do we engage in resolving the issue? Now, one of the main arguments which is being put forward by Murray Bookchin is that the although the crisis is out there, uh, the root cause of all this actually is very much embedded in the social structure. So he had given examples of how there is a hierarchy within the social structure, and in the process, uh, that there is a sense of dominations of humans by to other humans, to our fellow beings. So this sense of dominations in some way reflects when we try to engage with other forms of the non-human entities. So he's also talks about one of the main focus of his thesis is to engage with the idea or the notions of complementarity. So the ethics of complementarity is also one very important point which Murray Bookchin has talked about. So uh, the ethics of complementarity is very inclusive, and it tries to give ample space to other entities as well. So in other words, every sentient beings should be treated equally. So therefore, it tries to give a very important sense of how we go about it. Now, we also at length discuss into the nature of what indigenous knowledge is all about, and traditional ecological knowledge is by engaging into some of the works, particularly of some like Silitoy or maybe Dewald, and even the Silen and Smithson. So, as we all know, indigenous is something which is very much rooted in its original habitat place, and it also emerges primarily from people's perception and experience, and it is something which is being learned, the hands-on training, which is primarily through the engagement of trial and error kind of practices. So why is traditional knowledge or traditional ecological knowledge given utmost importance of late is also primarily because at a certain point of time, science and technology is perceived to be, catering to the needs and bring solutions to every forms of, problems which is encountered by human. And then primarily, if you look at the environmental crisis, science and technology, no doubt, has liberated us, and then maybe at some point of time comes up with certain kinds of solutions. But in the long run, it is not science and technology alone, which is, pretty much uh, uh, encompassing in terms of solving these issues. So therefore, there is an urging need primarily by the environmentalists, ecologists, or others to incorporate or to give space to the indigenous knowledge, where if we talk about uh, the notions of conservation or preservation, it is increasingly felt that the local communities themselves, for instance, the indigenous peoples, conserve nature in a better way, uh, uh, owing to their generations of inhabiting a particular geographical area. So in that sense, many anthropologists and ecological anthropologists also have felt that, particularly if you look at the works of Tim Ingold, the dwelling perspective, wherein it tries to give space to other non-human beings, where human also share a very harmonious and symbiotic relationship in nature in that sense. And he has given examples of the people who are dependent, particularly who profess or engage in hunting and so on and so forth. So by and large, this correlationship in some way is being absent when you bring in these notions of creating a binary between this nature and culture. So Levi-Strauss also talks about these the different forms of how knowledge systems operates, with that of the savage mind, and then with that of the scientific community, or the engineers. So he has at length given examples by bringing that notions of the bricolage. So one could see that the it is not that knowledge system was absent and not present, although people are not, uh, seen to be civilized enough. If one may, tends to see it from the Western civilization discourse. So therefore, it is a notion or in a very ethnocentric ways of, trying to categorize people from different aspects. So we have also at length discussed about some of the debates of why and then to what extent the shifting cultivation has been, uh, practices in terms of natural resource management in some parts of the world, particularly in the upland areas, mostly in the South East Asian countries. So there's also a long debate about primarily because many of the environmentalists and then including the colonialists at certain point of time perceive such forms of agricultural practices as nuisance, particularly because it does not really generate a kind of a revenue to the state. So therefore, it is perceived to be a wasteful practices. So such forms of the colonialist perception has been also ingrained in many of the post-colonial societies, particularly in the context of the Indian subcontinent, where shifting cultivation, such forms of primordial forms of agriculture practices are often frowned upon. But then, if there are certain cases of where certain indigenous communities would still practice or engage in such forms of practices, are actually based on their religio-culture practices, because their ways of life is very much embedded within that notions of forms of means of life. So therefore, such forms of economic practices at a later stage in some way becomes an integral part of those communities. So therefore, one could see that such forms of practices, particularly if you look at the works of P.S. Ramakrishnan, who to a large extent says that such practices, particularly shifting cultivation, has been able to conserve the biodiversity in a much more better manner because of the multi-species cropping system. And then primarily, if I may add, because these days the notions of climate change is a buzzword, and then particularly many of these traditional societies who adhere to such forms of agriculture practices, such as shifting cultivation, may have a way of adapting to such forms of environmental changes. Because since they believe in the practice of this multi-cropping, so at a certain point of time, maybe some forms of some particular crops may fail, but then others still thrive. So there is a sense, or there is a possibility that uh, uh, such forms of agriculture practices could be a way out to response to these environmental or climate change. So this is my assumption, and from my own study, I have come across, particularly if you look at certain indigenous people, such as the Kuki community in the Northeast, they have a peculiar practices prior to their pre-Christians uh, days. And owing to their indigenous religious practices, they have these rituals and ceremonies which are revolving around these agriculture practices, where they share a very symbiotic relationship with nature, and such forms of practices are very integral to their cultural identity even today. So although there may be some sorts of changes in terms of their practices, but historically, if we try to situate their indigenous knowledge system, there are ample evidences where we can say that their agriculture practices, such as shifting cultivation, has to a large extent contributed immensely in terms of their uh, harmonious. They share a harmonious relationship with nature, and therefore in the process, they have also conserved their biodiversity in a much better way, uh, even better than the present day. So therefore, there are certain sufficient and ample evidences in support of all this. So we have begin this course by trying to familiarize ourselves with certain forms of concepts, and then mostly, as I had flagged out in the beginning of the course, that this particular course is designed in such a way that it is mostly engaged with the works of ecological anthropologists, and also some environmental ethics, which may not be vastly covered by, but very selectively engaged with the works of Arne Naess and Murray Bookson and others, and also how some of the anthropologists over a period of time make sense of what cultural ecology is all about, what human ecology is, and so on and so forth. So, is there any questions? Hmm. Yeah. So there seems to be no much, uh, queries. So I will stop here, and then if there is any doubts or queries at any point of time in the future, so feel free to post it, and then I'll be happy to respond to it. And I wish you all the best for the final exam. And if you uh, engage with the lectures which I have, which is being circulated and uploaded. So, which may not necessarily require an extra readings as such. So almost everything's are being there. I mean, available there in the lecture slides. So therefore, the questions are also, being framed in such a way that which is explicitly, available out there in my lectures at the same time in the lecture slides. So with that, I'm signing off, and I wish you all the best for this particular course. Thank you.